Okay, let's talk about homeschooling versus public school. And what I want to do is talk about some pros and cons of each. I'm going to state right up front that in no way am I going to make a case that homeschooling is better than public school or vice versa. So if you're looking for that in this particular video, you're not going to find it because everyone's situation is different. Okay, people can have a great homeschool experience. Others may not have as good of a homeschool experience, and you can certainly have your child get a great education in the public school system. So I'm thinking that the people that are watching this video are likely, just making a guess here, but are likely going to be parents of children, and you are considering whether to homeschool or not. So I'm going to kind of assume that that's my target audience for this video. So a little bit about myself. I taught middle and high school mathematics for many years, but I'm also the founder of TabletClass Math, which provides math curriculum, and many homeschoolers have used our system throughout over a decade. So had a chance to work with all types of homeschool families throughout the country, and it's really been quite a great education for me because a lot of people think that people just homeschool for maybe one or two different reasons, but I've come to find out that there's all types of factors that may kind of have a family decide that homeschooling is right for them. And the great thing is that over the years, the options to homeschool have never been better. There's a lot of great systems out there. I like to believe that TabletClass is one of them in terms of middle and high school mathematics, but in terms of all grades levels, there's a lot of flexibility, and it's not like what homeschool families had to kind of experience, let's say 20, 30 years ago. It was really, not as much support. But either way, even today, it's still a challenging endeavor. But I want to kind of go through some factors, some considerations where you, I think, should be thinking about in terms of whether you want to homeschool or public school. Now, I will state right up front that the families that I've had a chance to work with have had all kinds of reasons why they were homeschooling. Okay, some of them got kind of forced into it because their child had a medical scenario or some sort of bullying situation, or others, have homeschooled all their children, and that's what they want, or they live in rural areas. So again, there's all type of situations why people may want to homeschool and why it's a better option than public school. Okay, maybe your public school where you live is not a good school, and trust me, all public schools are not created equal. There are some schools out there with a lot of problems. Okay, there are quite frankly, dangerous to send your kids to, and so parents would be like, I don't want to, put my child in that environment. Therefore, I'm going to homeschool. So again, multiple factors on that you need to consider, big picture in terms of whether you're going to homeschool or public school. So what I want to talk here specifically in this video are some of the other type of factors that you can kind of compare, the options. So if you're not quite sure whether you should homeschool or public school, I like to kind of go over these particular areas, and hopefully, some of these will be new in terms of your thinking. But anyways, the whole point of this video is to help you make a more informed decision. So let's get to our first factor here, and that is a teacher. Okay, now obviously if your child's in public school, they're going to have a teacher, and that's a real advantage. Now, of course, not all teachers are created equal, but especially if you're in middle or in high school subjects, like science or math, having your child having them have access to a great teacher, a very good teacher, professional teacher, that's a real advantage. Okay, versus them just, let's say, being, working with just a curriculum or a textbook or a video-based program. So don't underestimate the value of having your child having a teacher. Now, the kind of flip side to that is that your child will be will have some sort of kind of like limited access to the teacher as well. So let's say it's math, that particular teacher is going to have, let's say, 120 students throughout all their classes, roughly, let's say maybe 20, 25 kids per class. Maybe they have 4 or 5 classes they teach. It adds up, right? So yes, the teacher is an important factor. So it's one that you should kind of think about. Well, is there something is there another way you can kind of homeschool where your child does have access to a teacher at times? So you might be thinking about homeschool co-ops or homeschool groups where a teacher kind of comes in, or kind of local homeschool meetups. There's all kinds of ways, especially when homeschooling today, that your child can have access to a teacher from time to time. It's an important consideration, and I would say that from the elementary school level, you, the parent, may be able to kind of handle teaching all the subject matters. But as your child progresses, middle school and high school, you do want to have, I would encourage you, it's not absolutely necessary, but if you can get your child to work with a teacher or have teacher support, that's an important consideration. So think about that in terms of, whether you're going to homeschool or public school. Again, what grade level and what subject areas you're talking about can impact, how you're going to think about this. But teacher support is definitely important. Okay. All right. So let's move on to our next thing here, and that's the pace. Okay. So in public school, you have a teacher, and you're going to start, let's say, September, and they got to be done by June. So this is the pace. It's already set. And if your child is struggling to keep up, well, the teacher is just going to keep moving, and there's no flexibility in it. So again, homeschooling has real big advantage here because you can kind of adjust the pace of your child's education. That's a huge thing, and the flexibility of how that's done. So you're not going to find that as much in the public school, even though your child might have a great teacher. That teacher has to cover a set curriculum at a certain pace. So you're really kind of locked in there. So if you want more flexibility in that, you're not going to be able to really have as much in the public school system. And by the way, when I say public school, I'd say, what I really mean is all school type of scenarios, whether that's parochial school, charter school, etc. So there's a teacher, your child goes to a particular class, etc. So no, as for myself, when I taught middle and high school mathematics, you're charged to be able to cover a certain curriculum, and you have to get through these particular chapters at a certain time. And again, if a child is struggling, it can cause a lot of problems because, I'm speaking in terms of math right now, but I'm sure it's the case in other subjects as well, is everything's built upon themselves. Okay. Where in homeschooling, if your child is struggling a bit, you can kind of slow things down and then kind of regroup, modify, etc., and then move forward. Okay, it's a great advantage in terms of homeschooling. All right, so let's go down to our next factor, and I kind of abbreviated here, and that's curriculum. Now, depending on what state you're in, if your child is going to a public school, they may be using, let's say, a Common Core curriculum. You may not like that, and believe me. And I'm going to kind of keep neutral here, okay, because there's some parents or children that do okay with the Common Core, do well with it, others do not, okay. Me personally, I like more the traditional curriculum setup, but you may not have that option if your child is going to a public school in a particular state, okay. So by homeschooling, you can definitely have much more flexible options in terms of the curriculum you want to choose for your child. So you're not going to, again, in a public school, although you do have the advantage of the teacher, okay, and that's a tremendous factor, okay, especially if your child is working with a great teacher. But again, you're not going to have really any control over the pace or the curriculum. You're pretty much going to have to go with what the school is going to be using. So another consideration to be thinking about. All right, so let's talk about the next one. And here, this is kind of your child's social setting and environment, okay? And this is unfortunately I see this kind of becoming more and more of an issue. Why parents are choosing to homeschool. Maybe it's me, I'm just kind of using kind of anecdotal evidence, but unfortunately, there's a lot of parents that are finding that their children might be, in a bad setting, being bullied, or they just simply don't like the environment, social setting with that their child would be at in school. So they pull them out, and they put them in a more controlled, better setting that for the child. So as a parent, I could totally understand that. Okay, again, you're going to have to evaluate the public school or the school that your child would be going into. But the drawback on this, and this is kind of a popular argument against homeschooling, is, well, your child's not going to have any socialization, and I think that's not definitely as true, at least as my experience. Yes, your child is not going to be in a class of 20 other people, but a lot of homeschooling families, they're creative. There's homeschool groups, homeschool support, co-ops, etc. Your child can still participate in different sports leagues, and if they're going to be doing that. So there's a lot of activities that you can still do to keep have your child have a lot of social activity, and that's important in school. In other words, they're not just going to be at home by themselves learning, but again, you have to kind of weigh this in your own particular life demands. Are you let's say you're the mother, are you going to be home to support all this, or both parents working, etc. So again, when you're weighing these factors, whether homeschooling is better for you or public school, it's a very individual case by case basis. Okay, the parents, you're going to have to weigh all these factors, and you can make a more of an informed decision. But again, social and environment is definitely a factor to consider. Okay, so another one is cost. All right, and this is a big one as well, because the cost of homeschooling can be considerable. You're going to have to purchase curriculum. Okay, sometimes you can purchase a used curriculum, or you can kind of create your own curriculum, but it's still going to be a cost for sure, that you're more of a cost than just say public school. Okay, even if you're going to create your own curriculum, the cost in time and effort is significant. Okay, and I wouldn't necessarily suggest that unless you're a really experienced parent who's been homeschooling for a long time, and there's definitely those parents out there. But if you purchase a math program, a science program, an English program, a foreign language program, that cost adds up. Whereas, if you're living in your local city, town, whatnot, your property taxes are supporting. You're kind of already paying for access to your public school. Okay, so yes, public school, there is cost. Like, let's say if your child's going to be in band, or but it's definitely marginal in terms of how much you're going to have to spend outright to homeschool. Okay, so big consideration, because it can definitely add up, especially if you're homeschooling more than one child. All right, so let's take a look at this last factor. And there could definitely be other factors here on this list, but these are some of the big ones I can kind of think of right off the bat. And this is special support. So what do I mean by that? Well, let's say you have a child with some sort of special needs. If they're in a public school system, and by the way, Todd, I don't want to misspeak here. So if I'm making a mistake in what I'm going to say, then I apologize in advance. But if there are in the public school system, let's say they have a 504 or an IEP, you would be able to have, these are programs for special needs kids, and they'll have additional modification and additional teacher support, if they're in a public school system. Okay, so they might have a teacher's aide or something along those lines, and this is a very expensive part of the budget as well. So if your child's in the system here, they would have this additional support. So schools, and I'm really speaking in real general terms here, but school systems are going to spend the money the best they can to have that kind of special support, special needs. And if you don't have that, if you're homeschooling, you may be missing out on that. However, it's always best to just check with the district. Even if you're homeschooling, check with your local public school district and see if you can access some of these whatever support, ask and say, hey, listen, I'm homeschooling. Can I have access to whatever textbooks, support services? You just never know, okay? Because all districts are not going to be created equal. It depends on what district you're in, what state you're in, and then who you're speaking to as well. So, but definitely, if you're homeschooling, don't be afraid to ask, hey, or at least to explore what services are available to you. But if, of course, again, if your child's in the public school system and they have special needs, they're going to get a lot of special support that comes with it, and that is another big cost in terms of you not having to spend for that, out of pocket, if you will. Okay. So again, other considerations. Now, I want to kind of wrap up this video. I don't want to make this too long. Hopefully, I've given you some areas that maybe you weren't thinking about in terms of homeschooling versus public school. I can say right now, for sure, there's many, many, many great public schools out there. And when I mean public schools, charter schools, parochial schools, that, children, of all ages can go through all the grade levels, have a great experience, and do very well, go off to college, do whatever they can, and so you got to be careful of extremes, okay, stereotypes too, because people, oh, public schools are all terrible. No, that's not the case as well. Homeschooling, the same thing. A lot of people say, oh, homeschooling, that's, I would never do that. That's not going to work. Your child's not going to learn as much. I can tell you that's definitely not the case either. There's a lot of people that homeschool their children very successfully and go off to top colleges like Harvard or whatnot. So it really, you have to make these decisions for yourself. Okay, both paths can be successful, but I can definitely tell you, if you're going to homeschool as a parent, okay, your commitment has to be really like, just 100%, because it's extremely challenging. Now, I haven't personally homeschooled, but again, I've worked with homeschooling family, and parents are, you're directly involved. You're kind of going to be acting as the teacher in a lot of ways. You're going to be managing the curriculum. You're going to be managing the pace. You're going to be, thinking about what environments your kids are going to be in. You're going to be looking at the cost. You're going to be maybe doing additional support above and beyond that. So you're going to be wearing multiple different hats. You're going to be the teacher. You're going to be the guidance counselor. You're going to be the principal. You're going to be the curriculum department head. All those different things. So it's a huge responsibility. Now, again, a lot of homeschoolers won't just do it by themselves. There's different schools, and even the word homeschool, by the way, is kind of loosely used these days in terms of, you can have your children, enroll in an online school and be kind of still considered a homeschooler. So you could still have the support, and there's just a lot of different ways to approach this. But again, from a pure, educational standpoint, these are major factors that you want to consider for your child when you're making this decision. And one last thing I'm going to leave you with is this. If it doesn't work, and I've seen this time and time again, I've seen people go from homeschooling to public school to homeschooling. Don't be afraid to change. In other words, you're not set in stone or committed forever to be a homeschooler. Like, oh, if I'm on this path, I have to finish this path out. So there is flexibility. If it doesn't work for you, one strategy or the other, then definitely, do what's right, change, and don't be afraid to try something different. Well, let me go ahead and wrap this up. Again, if you're still with me, hopefully I'm sharing good information for you. Now, I want to say that if you are considering homeschooling, or even if you're a public school parent of a child in public school, I'm going to leave a link in the description of this video to my math learning program. It's basically, I focus on middle and high school mathematics, do a lot of other additional things as well. So if you're interested, you can check that out. Also, I literally have hundreds and hundreds of videos on my YouTube channel, mostly related to math, but I also like to give general advice to parents in terms of just education, math education, etc. So hopefully you'll consider subscribing. And if you enjoyed this video, if you got something out of it, definitely would appreciate a thumbs up. And leave me some feedback. I definitely don't know everything. I'm giving you my best advice and suggestions based upon my experience. But again, This is only my experience. You could very well, have other factors, things up here are factors that I missed, and that's entirely possible. So give me your feedback. If you have questions and whatnot, I'll try to address them in future videos. But I will just leave you with this, okay? In today's day and age, especially with technology, homeschooling is definitely a viable option. Okay, and education is definitely changing. There's all kinds of different hybrid approaches to things, especially again with technology, the internet. I think your options are getting more and more and more. So don't be afraid to explore homeschooling. But if you're on the fence, definitely do more. Do more research before you commit to say going into being a full-fledged homeschooler, because that's a huge commitment. But with that being said, I definitely wish you all the best with either approach you're going to take for your child. Thank you for your time and have a great day.